Hey everyone, I'm just making a follow-up video about this teleportation method I found. I got lots of support on that last video and a couple of you left some interesting ideas in the comments, which I'll talk about later. So I'll just start with a really quick overview of how this all works, and then we'll get into the tutorial and I'll show you some creative applications at the end. So like I said in the last video, this is a really flexible system, and the better you understand it, the better you can adjust it to your needs. So if you're interested in building this, I'd highly recommend watching the overview to familiarize yourself with the concept, but I'll leave timestamps just in case you want to jump around. Okay, let's start with the CPU. It's really simple. All it does is eject minecarts based on a simple timing from these two clocks. This one affects the frequency of the ejections, and this hopper clock affects the overall duration. Now if you open up the F3 screen and pay attention to these numbers right here, you can notice that they are pulsing right with the minecarts. And as long as you keep this chunk loaded, that number is going to display those pulses wherever you are in this dimension. You just need one of these for the overworld and one for the end dimension as well, unless you plan on never going to the end dimension or never logging out in the end dimension, then you don't need to worry about that. But for everybody else, you need one in the overworld and one in the end. So that's the CPU, and this is the teleporter. There are three main parts of this machine. You have the Ender Pearl stasis chamber, you have a player login detector, and you have a hopper clock with an output signal. When both of these activate at the same time, you get a signal right here, which triggers the trapdoor, which teleports the player. So all we need to do is set the piston to extend during a designated slot from the pulses in the F3 screen. For example, if we set one teleporter to have its piston extend during the first window, like that, and then have another one extend during the second window, we can just pause the game during the first window, leave the game, come back, and that first teleporter will be the only one that meets all requirements to teleport the player. Likewise, if we pause the game during the second window, leave and come back, we'll be teleported to the second. And if we pause and log out when there are no pulses, none of the pistons will be extended and we won't teleport. And that window is naturally built into the cycle when there's no pulses. So like right now, you could log out, come back, and you shouldn't get teleported. Alright, so I'm in editing now and I just realized I never demonstrated this. So here we have 8 teleporters, 8 numbers, and each number is assigned to the number of pulses that occur here. So if I want to go to station number 5, all I gotta do is I gotta wait 5 pulses here and then pause and leave. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and save and quit. And then jump on here. This is just to reset it. And it's 5. And so how I have it set up in my survival world is I know what, the first pulse goes to, I know what the second pulse goes to. It's pretty cool. Now, if you saw the last video, you might notice this is a slightly more refined version of the teleporter. The main improvement was actually in the login detector. All credit goes to Potato Noir and Agent Sam, but overall, yeah, it's just a more clean design, and you can set it up in literally a couple minutes. So hopefully that's all making sense. We're just timing up all of our teleporters with one of the slots from the CPU, and then depending on which slot you pause the game out and come back, you'll get teleported to a different location. Alright, so I'm going to go through the tutorial in the same order of how you'll actually set this up in your world. So we'll start by building a CPU in the end dimension. Again, if you don't plan on going to the end or ever using the end or logging out in the end ever, then don't worry about this step, but for everybody else, we have to start here. Okay, so I made a little platform out here. I would recommend just like having chunk borders on and building everything in the same chunk. Same chunk that the very middle block of your spawn pad is on. So That's the middle block, so I'm going to build in this chunk. Okay, so you're going to find that middle block right there. And then you're going to get a hopper there. And you're going to put a minecart with hopper on top. And then have a comparator coming out of the hopper. And a block. A torch. And a repeater on one tick. Next step is building the hopper clock. Let's go ahead and put a block here, a block there. And then let's go ahead and build the clock here. Sticky pistons and a redstone block there. And then go ahead and I put 28 items. This is kind of customizable, but the way that I have mine set up, I use 28 items, so, but to each their own. Next, go ahead, put a glass block there, a redstone dust, and then a few blocks here. Go ahead, do a comparator on subtract, redstone dust there, and then repeaters with exactly this delay here, and then 3 and 3. Should look just like that. Make sure the directions are going the right way, and then 2 redstone dust there. Then we're going to have an observer and a few blocks out here. This is where you're going to build your cactus minecart machine thingamabob. So I'm going to do a bunch of redstone dust. Let's do a repeater. It's really just the delay that matters here. So, you know, depending on how your chunk is set up here, you can kind of move some of these around, but just make sure that all these delays are the same. So after the observer, just a 1 tick delay, and then let's go ahead and build that part next. So the minecart section, it's pretty simple. So first you're going to oscillate droppers. So I use 10 just because that's an easy number to differentiate between like mob spawning and stuff. So 10 droppers like that, and then dispensers on top as such. And then you need hoppers. Hoppers going into the droppers. And then sand. Cactus. And you don't have to worry about putting anything on top of the cactus. They can grow, it's fine. And a rail. And then you're going to go ahead and put a minecart inside each of the droppers and the dispensers. So I'll go ahead and do that quick. And then once you have all the minecarts in here, we're going to go ahead and put blocks down here and connect it all up with redstone, just like this. After that, all we need to do is make a pearl chunk loader. This is the way that I do it. However you want to do it is fine. Right there, anvil, and ender pearl. And then after you get all that and everything looks good, we can go back to the overworld. Alright, back in the overworld, we're going to make another one of these CPUs. And since we're using the end portal itself to synchronize the overworld and the end CPUs, go ahead and just build this in a stronghold next to your portal. So you might want to carve out a nice space in the portal room. And so yeah, you're just going to build another one of these guys. The only difference here, you need to have this repeater delay here between this redstone block and this comparator. So this isn't built correctly technically, but go ahead and just smush these repeaters right here, right between this, and make sure the delay is correct. That's just to make sure that it all syncs properly. And one more thing before I forget, just make sure this entire CPU here is being pearl loaded, just the same as the end. And it's important that it's a pearl and not another portal, for reasons that I went into in my last video, but I'm not going to go into now. Just make sure it's an ender pearl chunk loader, and make sure it is all in one chunk. And once you got this built up, you can go ahead and put the items into the hopper clock. Again, I use 28. Just make sure that it's the same number of items across the system. So yeah, go ahead and build this here. A dropper facing down into the portal. And then we'll just connect this up here, just with redstone. And then put an item, any item, into the dropper. Then when this shoots off, it'll start the end CPU. Just like that. And it should be perfectly in sync. And once you have these two CPUs going in sync, you pretty much never have to touch these ever again. So that's the annoying part out of the way. Now we can have fun with the teleporters. So let's go see how to build those. Okay, we'll just build a teleporter over here. I would recommend starting with the stasis chamber and starting in a corner of a chunk. You don't have to, but the teleporter is going to expand over this way, and you don't want it to leak into a different chunk. So to keep it all in one chunk, I just like to start around here, punch 2 blocks down, put a soul sand, honey blocks, anvil, any trapdoor there, and then put a dropper here, pressure plate. This is just going to dispense ender pearls, and then fill it up with water, and then put a couple of hoppers just like that. And go ahead and put this block back there, and then put a repeater here on top of that hopper, a block, redstone dust, an observer to face out, a wall, a block, and then here we're going to do a stair, another block here. Go ahead and wrap these blocks around, and then a piston here on top of the observer. Okay, then we're going to have water here and here, and then put a block on top of this water source. And then put a chest here. This is for ender pearl storage, so this goes into the dropper here. Basically every time you get teleported here, you're gonna teleport, stand on the pressure plate, it's gonna give you another ender pearl, reload it, and then you'll be good to go. So you can put as many pearls in here as you want. You don't have to put this here either, whatever you want to do. You can also stack it up. After that, go ahead and put a sticky piston here, a block next to it, a few blocks next to it, redstone dust, some comparators, more dust, and then blocks like this. Put a repeater on 2 ticks like that, dust down. Then down here, you're gonna put a waxed copper bulb. Just make sure it's waxed. You don't want it to give off unwanted signals, so just make sure it's waxed. Then an observer and then a block. And then here, you're gonna go ahead and make, I did that wrong. You're gonna go ahead and make another hopper clock. Just like this. Alright, then you're gonna have an armor stand, and go ahead and put the leather boots on it, and as you do, make sure that you get 1 quick pulse here. If you did it right, just like that. That's how it should look. Oh, make sure the boots have Frostwalker. It can be 1 or 2, doesn't matter. And then go ahead and load this thing up with ender pearls, however many you want. And then you gotta configure it. So again, we're looking at these numbers here, and we're gonna put the items in the hopper pretty much right when it ticks. So figure out what window you want. Let's say I want this to extend in the 3rd window. I'll show you what that looks like here. Just keep an eye on these numbers here. 1, 2, and about now. And again, make sure these items, same number of items. I'll watch how that goes. See if it extends about when I want it to. Pulse, pulse, and it extends right on the third pulse. It's pretty much what you want, because then, you know, when you pause it after the third pulse, you come back, that piston should be extended. That's exactly what you want. And then after you've built the whole teleporter, just go ahead and load it up with an ender pearl. And now this chunk is going to be loaded no matter where you go, and it'll be ready to teleport. Alright, so that pretty much covers it with the tutorial. So let's go ahead and talk about some ways that we can take advantage of this system. So when I first designed this, I just had my own single player world in mind. I've got like maybe half a dozen locations that I frequently use that are also really far away from my base. So that's kind of what this is all designed for. A few far out locations that are now just a quick log off away. But somebody in the comment section brought up how you can pack up a teleporter and say a shulker box and build it as a temporary station while you're like out 1,000, 10,000 blocks exploring. Say you're like 10,000 blocks away and you just want to clear up your inventory space. Well, just have one of these teleporters at your base and then one in a shulker box in your pocket. And go ahead and build it down in like a couple minutes, go to your base, empty your stuff, go back, break it down, and keep going. And so I really like this idea just as a separate way of using it. You know, one more idea that I want to kind of throw out into the abyss before I wrap this video up. Another person made a comment about how each teleporter could be like assigned to some sort of code and then only go off when that code is correctly configured. So I wasn't honestly understanding their comment, but it did make me realize something. So let's say you have 4 pulse windows here. So you've got 4 pulse windows. Let's also say that instead of 1, you have 2 pistons extending at each location, and both of them need to be extended for you to teleport. By logging out during one of the 4 windows and then waiting for that cycle to finish, and then logging out during a second pulse window, you could set up each teleporter to only allow a teleportation if both are timed correctly. And I think that this would give you 4 to the power 2 different configurations that you could, so like 16, except you would have to subtract the repeated codes like 1 tac 1, 2 tac 2, but something like 1 tac 2 where you log out during the first window, come back, and then wait for the next cycle, and then log out during the second window, that could trigger a unique location that would be different from like 1 tac 3 or 1 tac 4. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I didn't even try to build that here, but I think it's definitely possible. I don't necessarily see myself using it just because I don't have that many locations in my own world that I would need to set up. I think 8 is kind of the perfect number for me, but if you want to go up to like 50 or something, I'm pretty sure there's a way to set these codes up to where there could be, that many unique locations. So anyways, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If you have any questions or other concepts that you want to talk about, go ahead, leave a comment, and I try to respond to as many as I can. And that being said, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.